This is the Amp Hour Podcast, recorded October 7th, 2015, episode 270, an interview with Dafydd Roche.
Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Dave Jones from the EEV blog.
And I'm Chris Gamble of Contextual Electronics.
And I'm Dafydd Roche, Audio Systems Engineer at TI and co-owner of Expat Audio.
He's a busy guy. Thank you very much for joining us, Dafydd. And
thank you.
And we all got your name wrong.
Yeah.
Don't worry, the world butchers it, okay? it's all fine.
Because it's spelled D-A-F-Y-D-D. Double D on the end.
Well, yes, quite. The double D in Welsh, which is where I'm from, Wales is where I'm from, becomes a the sound, so it's Dafydd. But it's a common name back home, and then everywhere else outside of Wales is just nothing. Yeah. There's 4 or 5 years of my school year, that kind of thing.
Really?
It's the without going into too much detail, it's the Welsh equivalent of David.
Ah, got it. Got it. Yeah. Okay, so you would
David's
still have trouble
common.
getting like a username on an account on Gmail and Twitter and stuff like that. Somewhat. You know, every once in a while I have to do that, safe Google yourself thing. Right.
You know, everybody does it once in a while. Yeah. There's only one of me, so it's not too difficult.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about audio.
Which...
Yes, we are. I'm quite excited.
I'm actually a little scared, to be honest.
Because Chris is supposed to be an audio guy, but he doesn't really know much.
Analog guy, but yeah, I mean, it's not always the same thing. I don't know, there's just so much, like, other stuff in there that, it's outside of my realm.
I've always thought of it as a lovely discipline of its own. It's the only disappointment is when people take it a little bit too far and become snobbish about it and use it as a kind of a differentiator. I'm better than you because I know more about this discipline than you do.
Yeah.
Those guys, I don't get along with those guys either. They're normally the neckbeards. So.
Okay.
And the snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Tell us, what do you do at TI and how long have you been there and all that sort of jazz?
Okay. So I've 14 years at TI.
Geez, you get less for murder.
Yeah. It feels like it some days, get a metal can and ring it against the old bars. I jest. So I started in sales there, worked my way through marketing, and these days I'm a definition engineer, what we would call a systems engineer.
Whoa, hang on. That's a new wank word we haven't heard of, a definition engineer.
Well,
yes,
I'm trying to use, every company calls them a different thing. So some semiconductor companies call us architects, some call us definition engineers, and TI calls us systems engineers.
Right.
But,
well, we've talked about, I think about it like kind of product marketing too, where like you're kind of figuring out what needs to go in the chip in order for it to actually sell.
Yeah. So I went through product marketing. Product marketing typically takes a product that's almost finished and starts, marketing around companies all over the world, right? So the marketing guy I work with, who is puts up with a lot from me. He will, I'll give him the data sheet and everything. I say, hey, we're about to release this in a couple of months, man. Go drum up some business for me. So,
right,
you better sell this thing. It's
exactly. This
I don't
is
know
my
what it
baby.
does.
This is my baby. We're talking about. You better sell this thing. So, he puts up with a lot. So
That's good.
But yeah, definition is visiting customers, like key customers, who really influence the design, negotiating with them, and then coming back to the factory, negotiating with the design team. The design team want to do as little as possible, and the customer wants you to do as much as possible.
Exactly. What would you ever do a chip specifically for one customer and go, well, as long as they buy it, they're enough business for us, and if anyone else wants to buy it,
That's a tough one. I could have said maybe 10 years ago we could have done stuff like that, and we did, right? There's a number of chips that came out that had, for instance, mobile phone type of customers behind them.
Of course, yeah.
The volume for those could have justified the development, and then it was like, okay, who else are we going to sell this to?
Yeah.
But I think generally across the whole industry now, everyone's kind of waking up and going, the development costs, the development risk is so much higher now than it was, that we have to have a mass market plan before we start development.
Interesting.
Right.
So it's not enough. It's not enough to just say, "Hey, some Korean customer or Chinese or Japanese customer wants us to make one of these, and we'll sell so many million units." Well, development costs being what they are, and risk as well. Because if you're not working on this project, you could be working on another. Right? There's opportunity cost that's always terrifying.
So even at a massive company like TI. You're still concerned about, this mask set is going to cost us, $1 million or whatever.
So I can't comment on costs and stuff, but
no, okay, but
but it's not always just the mask cost, right? There are other costs involved. For instance, if you have a big design team working on a project, every month that they're working on that project,
of course,
you have a 10-man design team, and you could burn through that kind of your what we would call PG cost, the tape out cost, within a month or two.
Oh, wow. Okay, so, right, yeah, of course, because
companies, engineers are expensive.
Yeah, and it's not just their wages cost. I mean, most companies have their own internal rate of what an engineer costs them.
Exactly.
Costs in actual quote marks, because it's like a multiplier, like 3 times. They might earn $100K a year, say, but it'll cost the company like $300K or something.
I usually put it at $250, and then it's easy.
Right,
every 4 engineers is $1 million, right? It's
right.
Super simple calculation.
That's a big cost, right?
Yeah.
And so, unless you're in the business of making, tens of dollars per chip, right? Or you're making a chip that can sell tens of millions of pieces. It's always going to be a struggle to do, to kick off big projects, adventurous projects, if you will.
Does this change because it's audio versus other? I mean, I'm guessing with consolidation in the industry, it's kind of across the board like this, but with audio, it seems like, there's probably more features you can put into a single chip, integrating more and more pieces on top of it. But it's not like there's new amplifier types on a regular basis or anything like that, right? It's mostly process improvements, stuff like that, shrinking, adding features. Is that correct?
We're always chasing. We're always chasing in every direction possible. You can just imagine a circle, right? And, if you push up, that might be how many watts of power you have in an amplifier, right? That's one way to grow the overall space. The other one could be getting a lower noise floor. A lot of people focus on pop and click. When you power the amplifier up, does it deafen you with pops and clicks and so on? And, we have customers who really push us to the limits on that stuff. We'll have customers who will take a 300-watt amplifier, single chip, or 400-watt single chip, and they'll turn off the subwoofer. They'll put the ear right up. Yeah, it's loud. They put the ear right up next to the tweeter, and then they nod to switch the amplifier on. And you're like, good grief, if this thing pops, we'll be lifting his ears off the wall. So it's those are pretty tough metrics to live by.
And really, really reckless testing too, I have to say. That's just come on, at least get an intern, right?
I think they're expecting the diving save. It's kind of like big game of chicken. Do you dare me? Do you dare me? Go on. Call me chicken, switch it on. Sorry. Except in Japanese.
Now, although you're not a chip designer yourself, do you know if it's, easier in quote marks to design like a real high-powered chip / die, or whether it's easier to design a lower power and like lower noise, lower distortion?
Oh, that's
for example.
Interesting.
I don't expect you to know the answer if you haven't actually done the silicon.
Well, I've been around enough of them.
Yeah,
these designers complaining about their job.
That's what I want to know.
It really is a horses for courses kind of game. So, if we look at, you'll have some designers who are maniacally focused on ultra low battery life. Right, and that's all they think about. And they're thinking, how can I make this MP3 player, go from a 8-hour playback time to a 24-hour playback time, and so on? How can I enable that kind of thing? Those are different concerns than the guy who's trying to make a 400-watt stereo amplifier on a single chip. Now, I will grant you that both ends of the market are beginning to merge, and some of the things we care about, in the ultra low power, are starting to sneak into the high power speaker and so on.
Right,
but it's
really. You wouldn't think that was needed.
Well, okay, maybe not at 400 watts, but maybe at 20 or 40 watts.
enough to still blow your ears out, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is more or less, my opinion on this is, there aren't many people, unless you go to South America, where people like to play, 2,000, 5,000 watts in their cars and so on. There aren't that many people listening at 400 watts, okay? But what you do get at 400 watts is acres of distance between your average power level and the peak, which is headroom, right? So you get you'll get better distortion performance. You'll get better distortion performance from a 400 watt amplifier outputting 10 watts than you would from a 20 watt amplifier doing 10 watts.
Of course, by nature of the dynamic range. The
exactly.
The
headroom of the amp.
Can you explain some of these? I mean, so I feel like one of my trepidations about this industry as well is like the different terms for things that are. It feels like there's other terms for them in other industries. Like there's a lot of distortion type of terms, and headroom obviously is talking about dynamic range and stuff like that. Could you explain some of those terms? I mean, is there like common vernacular that people should know around audio equipment like that?
Oh, I've got a fantastic one for you. The main one that frustrates me the most in the world. People look at the marketing number and look at the number of bits. Oh my goodness!
Right, yes,
this has got a 24-bit converter in it. This is
a
marvelous.
36-bit.
Oh my goodness! And
aren't some of them marketed as 36-bit or something ridiculous, 32-bit or something equally ridiculous?
And so just to maybe Chris, but to give you guys a little bit of background, you could typically multiply the number of bits by 6 to give you the dynamic range. There's a fancier multiplication than that, but generally it's about 6. So a 16-bit converter, which is what CD standard, right? CD was defined to be 16-bit. It gives you about 96 dB of dynamic range.
Right. Everything's dBs, right?
And everything's in dBs because the human hearing is logarithmic.
Right.
And so, 96 dB, I mean, when CDs first came out, I thought they sounded pretty dang good. And I still think they sound good if they're well recorded in the first place. All right, so 24-bit then is 144 dB dynamic range.
Right.
Now, let's put this in perspective. The human hearing, if you sat in a quiet room by yourself doing nothing for 3 weeks, you might be able to expand your hearing to the absolute minimum. That's the kind of running joke you have to run to.
Is that because of averaging, you're saying, like just over time?
Yeah, your ear actually has a way of protecting itself. The eardrum tightens, I believe.
Right.
I hope you don't get like a biomechanic who tells me I'm talking a little crap here, but my understanding is that it tightens up and therefore it protects the ears. That's why when you go to a loud concert and the next day you feel deaf for a couple of days and then suddenly the hearing comes back, that's the protection mode of the ears. So the human hearing can roughly hear up to about 130 dB of dynamic range, and that's for someone who's got spectacular hearing. So, and that's the difference between basically hearing atoms hit your eardrum, right? The smallest thing you can hear all the way to the loudest thing, which includes damage.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? So that's, I think, a maximum of 130 dB. So a 24-bit converter at 144, why? Why bother?
Right.
Because
because of noise, right?
Yeah. Because
the noise is what you hear
THD
anyway.
down there is like I've worked with like the world's best 24-bit analog to digital converters with a really low bandwidth of 2 kilohertz, and they're still only getting 130 dB minus 130 dB noise floor. You can't get the full 24 bits out of them.
No, you start worrying. When we talk about the voltage noise in a system like that, you start worrying about the thermal noise of the resistors at that level.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Right.
And so, really, the things I look for, the first thing I look for is what the dynamic range of the system is, and then what the distortion looks like. The bits of the converter mean absolutely nothing. And if there's one piece of advice I can impart on anybody listening is look a little bit further, scratch the surface of the specs. And a lot of the good manufacturers actually do show now what their THD specs are and what their
even on the front page of the data sheet. Come on, you guys! We always talk about this on the amp hour about how you put the banner specs on on the front
It's all
page
about
of the
what's
data
missing.
sheet, and then you hide all this stuff down in the spec
Yep.
tables.
I don't know what you're talking about, mate.
Yeah.
Don't know what you're talking about,
Yep.
mate.
Bastards.
No.
So this is your job, right? This is your job.
That is the yeah, exactly. That's the other bane of my existence is writing
We
data
have to
sheets.
sell these chips. We've got to sell them.
Right.
Well, like I have to finish the data sheet.
Imagine if they sold books like that, where they're like, "Oh, this first page, it's got to be the one." You know.
Yeah, now
No
make
one's
this
gonna
one
read past
gold
this.
lined. Make this one gold lined, right? And the rest of them can be just recycled toilet paper. Yeah.
So who actually writes the data sheets typically
I
in
do.
in a team like this? You do.
So the process would go as the systems guy. I'll start off with a system specification, right? So it's like imagine a 10, 20, 30 page document, a kind of high level that I would give, that I would hand around to customers and they read them and they pull it apart. And I'll give that to the design team as well. And the design team would say, you know what, he's asked for a really fancy volume control here that does zero crossing. And what we mean by zero crossing is that you only change the volume when the signal's crossing 0 volts.
So there's no little click.
Yeah,
and stuff
exactly.
Like that. Yeah.
You avoid zipper noise, loud noise.
Zipper noise. That's cool.
Yeah,
Zipper noise.
Yeah. So,
Zipper noise.
so I would say something like that, and then they would come back with, "Well, we think we can solve the problem like this." And then at which point I'll go, no. You missed this thing over here, or oh, that sounds great. And at which point they would write a little bit of how it works, the way they implement it, and that comes back into the system spec, which would eventually become the data sheet.
Ah, got it. So all those nice little theory of operation stuff in there.
Exactly. It's
Right,
between me and
okay.
design normally.
Got it.
And then
Got
it's a case of how much do we want to share of how it works, right? Because we also know the competition's busy reading our data sheets as well.
Oh, boo.
I know.
Come on. Boo hiss.
Yeah.
We want everything. Don't hide it from us.
If you had
That
everything,
means,
Dave,
that means they're
okay.
reading it too, Dave, right? I mean, that means they're reading their competition.
Come
too.
on.
I know what you're talking about, mate.
Yeah, but they
Right,
still
right, of
don't know
course.
how they're doing it at the silicon level,
Right.
unless you patent it. I mean, but you would patent if you got something genuinely new, wouldn't you patent it? And then it's safe once you've applied for the patent. Then it's safe to put it in the data sheet. They can't touch you, right? Isn't that?
Dave.
Have I stepped on a hot potato?
No.
Throwing hot potatoes.
No. It's actually it's interesting you say that because there is a school of thought, and I've heard both ways where I work. Right, there's a school of thought that says if you patent something, it becomes public and people can see how you
Correct.
did it, and then
Yes.
Get
innovate.
around it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then,
Exactly. In some cases, maybe you're just better off hiding it in the silicon. Nobody knows how you did it, but you still
Exactly.
managed to make it
Yep.
2 millimeters smaller, right? Good for you.
Yep.
Pat on the back. Sell 1 million pieces. Thank you very much.
Got it. But don't large companies like TI sort of, from a real top level value the number of patents that they have? Don't they always apply downward pressure? Look, come up with something innovative so we can patent it because that looks good to our shareholders and whoever,
There is.
Or is TI not like that? Because I know some companies are that they're just patent everything.
They select. So there's pressure to. So I have my first patent in the people are looking at them right now, and the patent office, I should say. So there's pressure to do so. There's pressure to innovate, right? Of course, there's pressure to innovate, but at the same time, we have committees of people that look through the patents to make sure that they make sense before we even apply for it. So it's not just like,
You actually do your due diligence?
Oh, yeah.
No way.
Oh, well, no.
I'm shocked.
We hear horror stories, right, about companies out there that just fire everything at the patent office,
Yeah.
right? And, it's like a machine gun, right? Some bullets are going to get the kill, and the others, you haven't got a chance with. There's a bit more than that, right? So we would have like a design community look at it first, and they go, that's been done 10 years ago, mate, out. Right, or they'll look at it and they say, actually, I think this one's got legs on it. Go ahead.
Right.
And then so that's generally the kind of stuff that we do.
Interesting. All right.
And a lot of what we do doesn't always have to be completely innovative either, right? When you're developing a product, it could just be a perfect fit of IP blocks that you had before.
Of course. Yeah,
Right,
slap them together, right?
So,
How easier is that? Can you... I presume you can do that, almost like a silicon level. You can go, okay, we've got that amplifier block, we've got this filter block, we've got this block. Can you just whack those together and bam, a chip pops out in a few weeks? Is it that easy,
no.
or is it?
I wish as a definition engineer, if that was really true, I'd be I'd be visiting customers left, right, and centre, saying one for you, and another one for you. It'd be like Oprah, you know.
But assuming you didn't care too much about the performance and you didn't want to optimize it, could you churn out a rough and ready chip?
Sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So if it's the general rule of thumb is that if it's a very digital kind of circuit, then you should be able to move it from one silicon process to another quite easily. And the challenge then is just making sure that they all connect together nicely. Right, so they don't end up talking over each other, or one locks up the bus when the other one's trying to get on there as well. And there's ways and means around that kind of stuff as well. So the analog stuff tends to be very process specific, which means this dream that we both have here of silicon all being able to jigsaw puzzle everything together. You really have to have a strategy around a specific silicon process that you're going to say, you know what, for the next 5 years or 10 years or whatever, we are going to try and make all our products in this geometry, so that if I ever need an amplifier, I can just borrow the one from over there, and if I ever need an A to D converter, I can borrow it from over there, and we can bodge them all together, and our chances of getting it up and running are pretty good.
But that's a trade-off, though, of ultimately what you can do performance-wise, as opposed to versus reusability. Right.
Definitely. And that's why it's not very common to see ultra high analog performance along with massive digital density.
Got it.
Right.
Of course.
That's all I can say about that, Dave.
Oh, because it takes so much to combine those two.
If you think of like the kind of the cutting edge silicon processes, they're like the 14 nanometer and stuff we hear about Intel playing with and so on. Those are so new that they may not even have good analog transistors and so on. And you might want to think about designing silicon very similar to designing PCBs with components, except most of the components you're given are crap. Right, transistors are leaky, capacitors are huge, resistors can drift, and so it's as a silicon designer, those guys really have to kind of compensate. They're constantly compensating all the way along. And so, for instance, let's say you've got a resistor that I'm making up numbers here, but let's say you had a resistor that can go plus or minus 20%. Right, and you needed to make some kind of voltage reference. Well, what you might do is take two resistors, the same value. And if they do drift, if it goes from 20K to 24K, well, both resistors at both sides of the resistor ladder, the divider that you're making, they'll both drift up or they'll both drift down.
Correct. So the ratio is still good.
The ratio is always good. And so that's the kind of challenge the analog guys are always scratching their heads about. It's pretty amazing. One of our guys recently was developing a board. Let's keep it nice and generic here. Developing a board where he was going to use one of the audio converters I worked on recently, and he needed to do some DC measurements with it, right? So audio converters are typically AC specified. Anything oscillates we'll handle, right? But anything that's DC, the specs. The devices simply aren't designed or spec'd for DC. And so, this guy had to go off and design basically a discrete version of my audio chip. From catalog parts, from some of it from the old Burr Brown stuff, right? Ultra high precision stuff. And he was like, he comes to me, he's pulling his hair out. He says, "You have no idea how many chips I had to get to do the same thing that's in this audio chip that you guys did." And I spent like $25 over here from DigiKey for all these chips, and the audio version is like $3. So it's it's pretty amazing. When you break it down, what we're able to squeeze in the audio chips, and on top of that, that's one of the reasons why we get industrial guys constantly trying to use this stuff for like measurement and so on, because.
Right.
Yeah, because it's 1/10 of the price, right? But it doesn't do DC very well. Dang it!
Yeah. Oops.
Anyway.
You mentioned Burr Brown, and that's a name which will invoke memories for all the old timers out there. Are these?
Yeah.
What?
Oh, wait, ready? National. No. Carry on.
Are they still like the old Burr Brown?
Oh, yes.
Old stroking the grey beard guys there.
Yes. The
yeah,
Burr
they
Brown
still call it Burr Brown.
The
No,
Burr
none of this
Brown
TI
is strong
rubbish.
with this one. So, it's all one big happy family now.
It's Unitro, damn it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's actually, it's been what... over 12 years since the Burr Brown acquisition. It's still a name that customers recognize.
Yes.
But we're gradually trying to move it to a Burr Brown by TI kind of thing. It's
12 years later, you're still trying to marketing is still trying to shake off the.
Well,
it sounds
actually,
like HP with Agilent and then Keysight. It takes a decade. It takes a decade or more for these names to,
it does.
For people to get used to it.
It's very regional as well, which is what I thought was really interesting. So the Japanese, the Burr Brown sound, they still love it, right? The Chinese don't give a crap. I mean, they are just like, you know what? Does it hit my spec? Can I get it next week? Can we go to production? Go. And so it's a night and day. So you have to market in different ways for those guys.
Oh, this is great.
But yes,
so they've still got the old greybeards are still there, stroking there.
There's fewer of them, to be fair.
Right.
Let's say you'd been 42 when TI acquired you. You'd be 54 by now, right? Which is getting dangerously close to retirement age for some of these engineers. Especially if they live, somewhere like Dallas, which is cheap to retire in. They'd be going, I wouldn't mind putting my feet up and playing with the grandkids a little bit. But it is. Carry on.
So you're actually based in Texas?
Yeehaw! Yep.
Yeehaw!
Yep. I've been in Dallas, Texas for 9 years now.
Right. Is that still where most of TI's action happens?
Yeah, this is the mothership. It's it's the mothership where all the big decisions are made and where fortunes are gained and fortunes are lost.
I'm pretty sure this is not.
Yes.
Pretty sure this is not proprietary, but TI still run their own fabs, don't they?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do, and it's
pretty sure that's public. I'm sure that's public knowledge.
It's definitely a position of strength for us.
Right.
Definitely. Yep. All my chips are made up in Richardson Fab, which is a fab that opened just a few years ago, and it's full to the rafters. It's great.
And what process tech is that? What? Geometry,
that's going to be difficult for me to share because I've just said all my parts are done up there.
Okay,
but
cool.
I think they're doing all sorts up in Richardson Fab actually. We've got technology. Some of the stuff the DSP guys were playing with 10 years ago, right? And it finally makes its way to the guys doing analog stuff because all the design kits and stuff are ready and so on, so we can take advantage of it.
Got it.
Sorry, guys. I've got to be careful a little bit.
That's all right. So you also do a thing on the side. You do a business on the side making do-it-yourself audio stuff. Expat Audio. Tell us about that.
So Expat Audio is a small company that me and another expatriate here in the US from the UK started basically to fund our own interest on the side. So, I had a hobby, trying to make audio stuff with some of the skills that I was learning, developing at TI, just, to retrofit my own little recording studio. And, I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to make a PCB run and I only need 5 of these, then I wonder if I can, sell the other ones to pay for the PCB run. And
that's how it starts.
And that's how it starts. I mean, it's had a couple of hiccups along the way. It is tough because TI is more than a full-time job. And a 4-year-old running around the house now is another full-time job.
I've got one of those. Yep. I've got a 4-year-old, 4-month. Yep.
Oh,
great,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
You have all the free time in the world.
Yeah, maybe after 9 o'clock, right? That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
I got a small space setup. I picked up a pick and place machine. A small reflow setup.
Tell us about that. You got a second-hand pick and place
Yes.
machine? Is this like a real name brand one, or is it one of those $4,000 eBay cheapies?
No. So this one was it was built in 1994. It runs.
There we go.
It runs MS DOS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we're talking.
And I'm just waiting for it to die.
It's a real man's pick and place machine. This
Yeah,
one.
oh yeah, it's as blind as a bat, right? There's no vision on it, so
no vision. Okay, right.
there is. There's a camera, but it's like for the operator to use.
It's a Polaroid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a ECM 93. The guys at Mancorp here in the US. Mancorp's a pretty big pick and place and manufacturing vendor. They basically take these old machines in. They clean them all up. They put newish hard drives in them, something a little bit more stable, and they ship them out. And I've been building with that now for about 2 years. I wish it was more busy than what it is. The lesson learned about a pick and place machine is that unless you're using it at least weekly, there may be better things you could be spending your money on.
Yeah,
that sounds right.
I think like every other kind of hacker, tinkerer, maker that's out there, you don't buy it just for them because you think you can make a ton of money. You buy it because you want to learn something. Right. I mean, I learned so much about how my customers have to try and my TI customers, right? The pain that they go through to manufacture just from running on my crappy 48 feeder pick and place machine, right? And
right.
certainly a lot of lessons there.
got it.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
So how much did a pick and place machine like that cost secondhand?
So I picked up secondhand, fully refurbished. It was about $8,000.
Yeah, that's fairly typical.
Yeah, that's not terrible. Yep. I mean, like, that's about it.
No, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it took a lot of, my wife insisted that I give her a presentation to justify why I should buy it.
A PowerPoint presentation in the kitchen.
She basically told me it should have animated dogs, animations, fly-ins, and animated dogs or something. And I was like, oh my God, he seriously said, you can't spend this without getting it past me. So the wife's definitely got a sense of humor.
That's good.
That's great. Yep.
But it's the expat audio stuff. I started off just doing analog stuff, and then MSP 430 came along. The microcontrollers from TI, and they have these little launchpad kits, very similar to Arduino. And so I was like, okay, what do I do? How can I use this? And I started dabbling with remote control stuff, MIDI, and you can, it's pretty fun to do. The only challenge is that there's a daytime job that's got to come first.
Pesky daytime.
Yeah,
jobs,
and the development accounts for those have a little bit more money than I do. So
right.
Yeah, right. You don't have any silicon engineers making new chips for your designs for XPad?
Do you know, I sometimes dream of that. I sometimes dream of I mean, it'd be a miracle. It'd be a miracle if I get an FPGA to work, but
it's called a foreign order when you actually get something done at the company through the back door for your own nefarious ends. It's called a foreign order.
Do you know, the closest thing to a foreign order I think I could pull off is, if I defined a piece of functionality and I was like, oh, it'd be really awesome if it just did this little thing in the corner kind of thing, Just that, yeah. And actually...
this customer called Expat Audio said they really want this feature and they'll buy a million chips.
Pieces, yeah. Well,
right, exactly.
We had a
really complicated and awesome customer.
But don't
really
worry,
great.
I've got a great relationship with the guy.
That's right.
So the piece of functionality, we had like a clipping suppression system that we put. I had finished a new ADC, and or we were finishing it, and I said, look, this thing's got a built-in preamplifier on the front end. And, most customers, they just dial it in, right? So they say, hey, I'm plugging into a cell phone, so I'm going to need to boost the signal up to get it into the ADC. I'll dial it into a certain number and, 6 dB of gain, right? Double the signal, that should be enough. And I said, for pro audio, it'd be awesome. If it detected clipping, it would turn down the volume just a little bit, just like that sound guy at the concert venue, right? If the drummer starts getting excited and plays a little hard, it backs off the volume a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so we put this feature in, and I was like, I sneaked that one past. That's awesome, that is. And then I was busy presenting to a customer like 2 months later, and they were like, what's this? That's really cool because you can do blah, 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 blah with that. And I was like, yep, all right, yep. I was thinking about that.
That was on purpose.
Yep, that was fully on purpose.
I have your needs in mind,
I'm a
customer.
visionary.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good fortune. That was good
dog
fortune.
fooding. That's what it is, right? I mean, you're
It's
trying out
dog
your own
fooding,
stuff.
yes.
You know what you need. That's good.
Actually, my first boss at TI when I was in sales, he gave me a small budget to do PCBs and stuff because his concept was, you're learning so much by doing that you can kind of emulate the customer experience.
Awesome.
Dog fooding, as you said, right? And I look back with a lot of respect for that guy because it didn't cost him a lot. It was like $100 a quarter or something. I mean, it was.
Oh yeah, exactly.
In the grand picture of things, not that much. But what did I do back then? I had an MSP430 and one of those little Nokia displays. The old 3310 displays. And he said, I've written a driver for it. And I was like, great, I'll borrow that. Thank you very much. And it was just the beginning of tinkering and pulling systems together.
Yeah.
And now it's a sickness, and you bought a pick and place machine, and your life's never been the same.
Yeah. I've really got to control how the garage is looking now. It's there's the pick and place, the 3D printer, the laser. It's all I need now is the time to work on it, but preferably in about 25 years. Thank you very much.
How important are demo boards to customers? For parts, for these new parts, do they absolutely? I'm not going to use this because there's no demo board.
No,
screw you. I'll go use the competitors.
That's really interesting. So if you have a hardware controlled part, so we define a hardware controlled part as something that you pull this pin high, that low,
a current source into a resistor, right?
Yeah, and you give it a little bit of power, and it just works, right? In many cases, customers will just they'll take our little reference schematic that's in the datasheet and wire it up and hit print on their PCBs, no problem. But the second that you start getting higher functionality, where you need, for instance, an I2C port or an SPI port.
A serial bus to control some internals, and it's got internal registers and stuff like that.
And let's be frank, right? Those are the most exciting parts. Because, in my opinion, right, as a product definer, those are the most exciting parts because I could put so many more Easter eggs into that part than I can do with pull up and pull down, lines. I mean, pull up and pull down lines, I just smack my head against the wall. I'm like, all you want to do is switch from like 44.1 to 48K. There's blood smatterings on the wall where I've been hitting my head against the wall. About parts like that. I've been in meetings with customers where I'm pleading with them, please take the I2C stuff and the SPI stuff. I can help. We can do so many more cool things. And sometimes the occasional customer's like, nah, we just need hardware control, mate. That's all we want.
That's all we want. Pull a pin low.
Exactly.
I can understand. Yep, I can understand both sides of the equation.
Bells and whistles, Dave. It's all about the bells and whistles.
No, it's not. You got to understand us hardcore hardware guys. Sometimes we just want to pull a pin low, and it's low. Damn it.
Right. If you don't, then you're bringing in a firmware guy. Then and it's like, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to argue with my host. I understand that as well. I'm just there's so many cool things now you can do in parts. If you're willing to take the risk with a little firmware. And when we say risk with a little firmware, I don't think it's just TI. I think all my competitors do this. The GUIs that come with the eval kits now, they help.
Oh yeah.
They'll give you the initialization script, right? You just sit there, set it up as if you were plugging into your old system. And in fact, that's what a lot of customers of mine have done in the past is they take their last generation product, they take the lid off, they desolder the old part they used, and they put our part in through the eval kit. So they'll, blue wire is the term we use. They blue wire it in.
Been there, done that.
And fire it up, right? And at which point, they can set it up and say, dump these settings, give it to my firmware guy, and, he can implement it for me. And it's done on a regular basis. A lot of these if you think of the boom boxes that you can buy these days, boom boxes or
like the Bluetooth speakers, you mean?
Yeah,
Like
Bluetooth speakers as well. Yeah, I'm thinking more of the old kind of the ones with a CD and a radio and, and what we'd call a mini micro combo.
Oh,
a lot of those
okay.
come with a very specific... there's like 2 or 3 manufacturers that make an SoC that sits in the middle. And this SoC is there to look after the CD drive, the servo and all that kind of thing. It might have an FM tuner, incredibly application specific. And so, a company making a box, making the end equipment will be like, oh, I don't want to write this firmware. I'll get the manufacturer of that cool SoC to do it for me, and I'll tell them what settings I want.
Right.
Right. And so these guys can take the firmware file and say, hey, Mr. Chinese semiconductor manufacturer who makes DVD SoC type stuff, here's my settings. Go implement it for me.
Nice.
It's distributed engineering resources. How's that?
Right.
How's that?
Okay.
That's one for the bullshit bingo, right? So.
Yes.
But yeah, so it's good tools, good EVMs are very important. To summarize, Dave, good tools, good EVMs are very important for parts where there's some firmware to be done, and this is the one that's always painful. Parts which are very high performance, where you have to show people, if you lay out the board like this,
example layouts. Yes.
Yeah, if you're nice to your grounds, and so on, then
Here's the performance it's capable of. You can get this on the reference board, and if you don't follow our instructions for laying out, for the layout, then you're not going to get the same performance.
Yeah.
So don't blame us.
Exactly. Well, it's in the IT world, they say, have you switched it off and on again? In semiconductors, we say, did you follow the reference design? No. Okay. Roll up sleeves.
So is that like a rule that you'll do reference designs for every analog chip, or is it only where warranted? You go, we just couldn't be bothered with that one. It's not really important.
It's never a case of we can't be bothered.
Right.
It's more of a case of.
Well said.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I still have my badge tomorrow. I think it's more about is there one truly required for this device? I think most of the time these days, at least in the organizations that I'm aware of, we try to release an eval board for every single device. However, in some cases you'll have a superset chip that is pin-to-pin compatible with a lower-end chip, or you'll have, footprint compatible, so the first 20 pins are the same, and the lower 8 pins, are on the high end and not on the low-end chip, that kind of thing. And under those conditions, we'll probably release only the high-end one and tell customers, hey, you know what? You can run the high-end chip in this mode, and it'll emulate the low-end chip.
Sure.
So,
and that's fine. We're happy with that as long as we can get our eval board.
Oh yeah. It's actually on new devices it happens almost always. It's old devices where people are like, "Hey, do you still make that eval kit from 15 years ago?" And you're like,
from the 1980s.
Grief, I mean, yeah.
Oh, goodness, we haven't even got the CAD files anymore. What you have to do is take the old eval application note, which is a scan copy.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you have to do toner transfer of the. We've got the PCB layout in there, and you can flip it over and toner transfer.
I have seen, TI is known as having a pretty good obsolescence policy, where we only obsolete when we absolutely have to, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the fab is shutting down, or the test equipment can no longer be used or something, then sometimes you have to say, sorry guys,
last buys.
Yeah,
last
exactly. Yeah. But under those, for some of those parts, right? There may not even be documentation in anything other than the scanned PDF format. And it's pretty scary, actually. It makes. I do sometimes wonder how these folks, how they managed to develop awesome products like this, before they had, methods of version control and so on. Mm-hmm. I hear, TI in the UK was one of the first offices that opened outside of the US. And TI was actually one of the first companies to use email. And
fancy pants.
And TI UK had one email address. You'd email this, they'd get the email, right? This is fantastic, right? And the assistant for the group, whatever, would print it out and put it in someone's letterbox.
And then type it all back in when they had a response.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's wonderful. It just tickles me no end to think, cutting edge technology, yet somehow, it's kind of like us.
Let's go.
We transfer it at the speed of light.
They get us awkward when there's an office romance with another. Bill, I think I got your mail again. This is your wife loves you very much.
It wasn't that long ago I was working at a big military company who would still do everything in triplicate paper form. So if you wanted a purchase order, you had to handwrite the purchase order on the special triplicate paper.
Wow.
So, each person would get a copy and you'd have to go put it in somebody's, pigeonhole to, the purchasing officer's pigeonhole to, I want to order that part from Farnell's, please.
Military guys are crazy though, right? Military guys, have a process in place and thou shalt not deviate from that process.
Yes.
It's down, I think a lot of it is down to accountability. Right, so if someone ends up ordering the wrong part, let's say you got a voltage regulator that was 5 volts instead of 3.3, and suddenly the missile arms but doesn't come off the aircraft. Right? Dang that 5-volt regulator. Oh, sir, we can't land the plane. Anyway, there we go.
Do the parachutes have voltage regulators?
No idea.
You mentioned we were talking. Going back. You were talking about boom boxes.
Yes.
Whatever.
What the hell are
I'm
those?
going back to the 80s here, before Chris was born.
Yeah.
Okay. And all the rage back then, the 80s and the 90s, was that every manufacturer would outdo themselves. Watts. How many watts can your boombox produce? And then they'd come out with it was almost like a de facto industry standard term, peak music power
PMPO.
output, PMPO. How much do you hate PMPO?
PMPO is the bane of my life.
It hasn't changed.
What is it?
I don't really see many people do it anymore.
No,
it's like, this is real RMS.
Yeah. So PMPO was a way. Yeah, I remember buying like PC speakers, and they would say like 80 watts PMPO. And
80? It'd be 800 or 8,000 watts peak music power output.
Absolute peak. There was some strange calculation for it. Like, if the speakers were 1 ohm, how much power? And they were, so many. I don't know how so sensitive. How much could you theoretically, for a split second, before everything melted, for that split second, run it? Oh, that's 800 watts, mate.
And then there was a fudge factor multiplier on top.
Yeah.
There was some sort of rule of thumb industry fudge factor or something. It was like bizarre. And everyone was trying to outdo themselves.
So these days, the numbers that people are always trying to push their luck on is how many watts at a percentage of THD, total harmonic dissonance.
THD, yes. And you'll find that in, you get your Sony, buy your Sony amplifier, go home theater receiver, go look at it. They'll actually put in the specs. They'll have, it's 10%. It's a 5, we sell it as a 500 watt amplifier, but it's got 10% distortion.
Yeah.
At 500 watts. If you want 1% distortion, it's only 100 watts.
And in fact, I've had Chinese manufacturers, one comes to mind, where they asked what the number would be with 30% distortion.
30%
and distortion. So that's basically a square wave. What was supposed to be a sine wave is now a square wave. They didn't ask how hot the chip would get. That was like the last thing on their minds. It's like, here I am frying some eggs on top of this darn thing, and it's doing just fine, guys. 30% distortion, fabulous. Actually, the whole THD thing is another audio thing we can kind of
I'd love
defluff here.
I was going to ask about that as well, because I've seen. I remember it wasn't Bob Peace, maybe it was like Paul Rako or something. Someone wrote about it, and just like how there's some really really low numbers on certain things for THD, right? It can get to like 0.0000 whatever.
Yeah.
I've done and measured stuff at that sort of percentage level.
Maybe it was Dave who told me this.
Yeah. It's true, but over a very small bandwidth. It was over like 2 kilohertz bandwidth,
Well, try finding a loudspeaker that can do that. That's the challenge, right?
Exactly.
So you could buy the best DAC in the world, you could buy the best amplifier, but your poor speaker's running at like 0.5% or 1% THD. And if you buy cheap, nasty ones, which I love buying, because I have short arms and deep pockets, these guys can run for Yeah, 1% if you're lucky. I mean,
and that's not including room acoustics, which is greater than even the crappiest speakers, right? So to get the performance out of your $20,000 pair of studio reference monitor speakers, you've got to be in a bloody anechoic chamber.
Yeah, you got to treat the room, and that could be another $20,000 right there. Yeah, they're a funny crowd, crazy. The audiophile crowd. I was going to stay away from insulting them, but they're a funny crowd.
No, they're a bunch of snake oil salesmen, And you can't, and that's the thing, right? You can't argue with them because they'll always come back with the argument, have you actually listened to it? Have you? You can do all the measurements in the world.
Have you heard Roger Waters fart on the Dark Side of the Moon?
Yeah.
Oh my
God,
Dark Side of the Moon.
Lived. They always Dark Side of the Moon is like the reference.
Yeah, right.
The Holy Grail reference.
I mean, like, because there's always the thing with the phonographs too, or LPs or whatever, And I'm like, but what about the friggin' needle? I mean, like, I know, I get it.
No, that warmth is distortion that they like. It's not clarity, it's distortion they like. I'm convinced of it.
Yep.
I'm sure somebody is going to start commenting and poo-pooing everything I say here, but I think it's something to do with the harmonics in the distortion and not the actual how low is the noise floor and so on. Because the noise floor, the signal to noise ratio on vinyl is, it's better than cassette, but it's not even as good as CD.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's they just love distortion, and they won't. If you try to do like an A/B comparison with them, it's like, oh no.
Yeah,
sure.
Right.
Dave, it's funny you say Dark Side of the Moon there, right? So I got a little story to share with you here, right? So I used to be marketing for high power amplifiers. So we had a 600 watt single chip amplifier, and our sales team down in South America is like, you got to come visit these customers. They do car amplifiers. There's a huge market here in Brazil. Come and visit. This is like 10 years ago, right? And so I head down there, and he picks me up in his bulletproof car. So Sao Paulo in Brazil is pretty scary. I open my laptop to do some work.
This is some junket.
Yeah, and he slams my laptop shut. He says, we're not stopping at any red lights if you have your laptop with you, because people will smash the window and take it. It was pretty scary down there. But anyway, so we start driving uphill, and anyone who's been to South America, Brazil, will tell you, if you start driving uphill, get very scared, because it's on the hills where all the favelas are, the really, really poor areas. And anyway, in the middle of this favela, there's a car stereo manufacturer, right? They've got their little production line there. They've got people milling cases and extruded aluminum cases and so on. And so they take me into this little hut, which is the only way I can describe as a hut. Whitewashed walls. The stuff that you put on farms? The whitewash paint? Okay.
Right.
All right. So I'm sitting in there, and there's a bench running around in an L shape in front of me, and a small coffee table where we have this little meeting. And I'm like, check out this little eval kit, right? I've got the eval kit with me, Dave. And I'm like, analog in, hook it up to your speakers here, 600 watts, thumbs in the air, let's go for it. And, they listen to it, they, hi, they okay, yeah, I think we like this for our low-end model. I said, low-end model? They go, well, we make something a little bit bigger. Would you like to hear it? Sure, sure, right? So these guys hook up this 5 kilowatt amplifier. and the speakers are these huge cabinets. They must be like 2 feet by 2 feet by 4 feet. I mean, it looks like it's about the size of a huge fish tank, that kind of speaker, right? And it's sat underneath the benches. And he plugs it in, he switches it on, there's a little thump, tiny, I didn't have my ears up to next to the speaker. And, the guy pushes play, and all of a sudden all I hear is breathe. I think that's from the album you were talking about, breathe, breathe. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It opens up this huge bass, and the walls are shaking, right? There's reels of parts falling off shelves, right? And these guys are just sat there with this huge grin on their faces, like mine's louder than yours, nanny, 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 kind of thing, all I remember is, reels of parts shaking and then falling off shelves. It was like a small earthquake. It's fantastic. I tell you what, I went home with my tail between my legs that day. Honestly, I was like, you walk in thinking you've got the nuts, right? Look at this part, one chip, 600 watts. That's nothing,
Right.
Oh, well.
Oh, that's terrific.
Sorry. But yeah, there's been lots of funny meetings with customers in my time.
So we were talking about the comparison, too, about, like, being able to hear that stuff. and I don't know if you guys ever heard it. NPR did a thing a while back where it was actually about compression, but even like compression things, like they were doing like 128, 256, 320 lossless, and like you couldn't. I mean, my ears couldn't pick it out.
In A/B comparisons, you can't. Even the audio fools who claim they can, when you actually put them in a true scientific A/B double-blind comparison test, which they'll never agree to do, but some have, foolishly. And these can't pick it. It's just random, right? They're just full of crap. They think they can hear, up to 25 kilohertz through 3 walls. But it's like, they're just
I used to believe the same thing, Dave. And especially when you talk about 25 kilohertz, I used to think that, that's rubbish. You're here. Everyone always tells us, right? As we age, our hearing gets worse and worse. But I've had some of those hearing tests.
I will. And I will agree. Some people are. Yes, they are very good. They are very good.
No. But what I was going to say is, you don't hear frequencies up there, but you feel them. So, for instance.
At 25K?
For me, it feels pressure. At 5 kilowatts or what?
No. It just, for me, when I listen to stuff like that, it's not a pleasant experience, actually. If someone puts a sine wave at 25K, into a pair of headphones for me, something that close to be fair, I feel it as pressure. It feels like someone's like trying to put their fingers and push on my eardrums. And so
well, that's a signal level thing. That's not necessarily
It's at the same levels. It's the same levels. I'm not like pumping watts. Yeah, and believe me, I'm the first to say BS on stuff like this normally. But it's definitely something you experience. It wasn't a pleasant experience.
See, I've done that. I've had a professional audio test in a little, anechoic booth. Where, you whack the headphones on and they'd shoot your test signals. You had a button you had to press when you heard it. I've had, and like they couldn't, I couldn't hear.
No,
those
there's
those
long silences and you think, should I push the button or not?
Right. Actually, I got a funny story with that. Right, they did this. It was part of a test before I had to work for a company. Right, it was part of their medical test. How good your hearing. And so I went in this booth, put the headphones on, and they told me, okay, hit the green button when you hear a tone. And I'm sitting there. Nothing's coming through.
And the guy in the booth is pissing himself laughing, right?
No, they like this went on for like 5 minutes or so, and then they came running out and they banged on the glass and they went, "Are you deaf? Can you hear anything at all?" And I just went, "What?"
Did the test start yet?
And it turns out I actually had a faulty pair of headphones. They didn't work at all.
So at the
so they fixed that
at the audio engineering show they do them once a year, or engineering show, and there's normally a truck there at this convention on the exhibition floor that you can walk into and get your hearing tested. And what they're really trying to do, and what I think they're really trying to do, is sell you a pair of molded earplugs, right? So you can
of course
no one does this stuff for free, right? So I'm sat in there, and again, same with you, right? You're going, oh God, it's been like 30 seconds since I last heard a tone. Just push the button and hope. And you push the button. and so, I come out of the truck, right? And this lady walks out with a printout, and she goes, oh, I bet you were a bass player in your teens. And I was like, that's spooky. How do you know that? Do you have a crystal ball? Are you like psychic? Something strange like that? She goes, no. Your left ear has got damage right where the crash symbol is. Right there. I bet that drummer was really happy, and I was like, flash back to my teenage years, thinking, if I played in enough bands, girls would like me, it's like, oh no, oh my God. But somehow, the damage is very notched, though. It's like at that frequency, there's a huge drop in the graph.
Wow.
So you don't lose everything above that; you just lose notches.
Interesting.
So,
what if you were a drummer? Did you lose everything then?
You know what? They didn't have much to start with.
Yeah.
Come on, we got to get a drummer joke in, How do you know there's a drummer at the door? How do you know there's a drummer at the door? The knocking gets faster.
Nice. So, there's a whole range of jokes about drummers, right?
Yeah. They really are the butt of so many jokes. They're like the Irish of the musician world, It's like, So anyway.
So have you tried to put rocks on your these magic rocks, tape them around your cables to make them sound better? Have you used these bidirectional cables, the cryogenically frozen ones, the
No.
ones which have been rubbed by nude virgins with snake
No,
oil?
I'm actually quite happy to use cooker cable for most of my stuff. Electric cooker cable.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is some. One of the fellas that used to work with us was a fair bit of an audiophile, but with an engineering background, so I could take a little bit of what he said seriously. He used to talk about with the bidirectional cables, occasionally they'll put a filter at one end and so on, so that you don't get impact of so much capacitance on the line and stuff. And you could kind of sit there and go, yeah, I can kind of see what they did there, but I'm not paying $10,000 for this, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Even if it does my taxes, I'm not buying that cable.
there's always people that say you should spend 10% of your budget for your hi-fi system on cables. On cables.
Yeah.
And again, I'm sat there and saying, I can completely understand replacing the crappy ones that came with it, right? Because the cables they throw in with it is garbage.
Thin as.
Garbage, right? But, $10,000 on a pair of speakers and, those rocks and the lacquer or something. I'm just like...
The lacquer and
oh, my goodness gracious me. I mean, at which point that stuff is a conversation piece for a guy who doesn't have enough to talk about.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like they'll start the evening off with, well, how about them Cowboys? And then they'll move on to, have you seen this lacquer? That's the depth of the conversation you have, I think.
Have to come and fill my weighted wooden knob retrofitted knob that I've put on. Makes it, the bass sound a lot better because I've got a wooden knob on the volume control,
What does the lacquer refer to? Sorry.
Oh, so there's this, I think it's something called C37 or L37 lacquer that they used to talk about, painting it on the knobs or something like that, and somehow it made the system sound better. I mean, you wouldn't believe that. I've heard people talking about mounting printed circuit boards at 45 degrees so that the Earth's natural
so that emits the right willy waves.
Yeah, no, so that the Earth's natural waves kind of hit it at 90 degrees and don't mess with the electric. You know what? It was one of those things where I was so busy going, what the, that I didn't actually remember the details. I was just too busy going, wow, people are buying this.
Yeah.
yeah, it must work for someone. Right?
Well, the thing is, if you're making a $10,000 cable, really, you need to sell 5 per year, right? And you've basically got your house paid for.
Yeah, you don't have to sell
many, right? You just need 5 fools to buy your stuff.
Suckers, that's right. But as I've always said, with this audiophile stuff, if you pay $10,000 for a cable or $1,000 for a power cord, you will hear the difference. I can guarantee it.
You will it.
I can guarantee you will hear the difference. Right? Because you aren't going to admit you've been duped.
I mean,
I
can see someone spending $10,000 on a pair of speakers because good speakers. I wish I owned a pair.
Good speakers are
breathtaking, right?
There's a point where it becomes silly, but there is a big step from cheap speakers to good speakers.
And the same goes for the DAC. Same goes for the amplifier, the power supply.
Yep.
And then maybe the cables. Yep. But man, a lovely set of speakers will make the hairs in your arm stand on end. And that's quite a religious experience for me. That's like, wow. Still working on getting the wife to approve those speakers. Might take a little while.
Right.
Did try well, it's my job, honey. And the response was, if it's your job, they can bloody well pay for it.
Pay for it, exactly. Sorry, I'm on her side.
Well, no. You got to go with it's a business expense. That one's a little bit, bit more legit.
Extra Audio would have to be making that kind of money in the first place.
Right. Step one.
So, what is your holy grail speaker? Are you a B&W man? Or
so B&W makes some wonderful speakers. They do make some wonderful speakers. I'm not I've listened to all sorts, and all I can tell you is in a lot of the sound rooms that I've been taken to, B&W have definitely been used. I'm trying to think of the other brand. So I was visiting another customer. It must have been a couple of months ago in Japan, and they made in-car stereo stuff, right? So they made a replacement 2-unit tall car stereo. And this guy was like, "Oh, you must come and listen to my stereo. It's using your chips. Oh, it's very, very good." And that little 2-unit head unit sounded better than any amplifier I've ever heard. It was. I wish I could remember the.
Oh, wow.
I think it was one of the old big Japanese companies, kind of. It wasn't a Sony, but it was like Mitsubishi or one of these old industrially type companies that had a division doing automotive amplifiers. And this thing, wow! I was thinking, this thing is like 8 inches across, maybe 10 inch deep. It was a cube. It's like a car stereo, right? The kind that you and I probably put into our first cars, and doubled the value of the car. But okay, I mean, this would have done more than double the value of the car. But the lesson I learned very quickly was, it's not necessarily the size of the amplifier or you can make a fantastic sounding system in a very, very small space.
But with audio stuff and audiophile gear and everything else, I always say that if you're not doing proper A/B double-blind scientific comparison tests, everything is totally subjective and total psychology. And good luck to you if you want to buy $100,000 hi-fi with all these gimmicks and it sounds great to you. Well, who am I to argue that it sounds great to you?
It's an emotional purchase, right? It is an emotional purchase. And for many people, it's a piece of furniture as well, right?
It's a conversation piece.
It's more than just audio. But Dave, one of the things you touched on there, and one of the things I've always struggled with is, I can't think of many people who have an audio memory. Right. In other words,
that's right. So
if someone shows you a TV and they show, the MPEG compression, that everything's moving except the grass or whatever they said, you can tell one TV to the other, and you could switch off that TV, switch on another one, and go, "Oh, this one's much nicer." But unless there's something seriously wrong with the audio, and when I say seriously wrong, like there's no bass in one speaker, but there is in the other, it's very, very difficult to have that kind of audio memory.
Yeah, it's certainly there because, like, a lot of your audio files, they will have, like, The Dark Side of the Moon, and they've listened to that a million times on the top of the range systems, and they know what it should sound like to them. To them. It's always to them.
Yeah,
it's never,
perception-based. That's right.
Yeah, it's perception, but they know what it sounds like to them, so they will be able to pick a shitty system if they hear that song on some other system. They'll be able to pick it. So there is some memory there, but I think you're right. It's not nearly as good as visual.
It's almost like saying, I remember that the bass was good, or I remember the bass should kind of sound like this. It's not actually like an image. You remember the image. With audio, I think it's more like you remember the... feeling is the wrong word.
You remember the emotion of it.
Or what you thought at the time of that audio. It had terrible bass. There was something was resonating at some strange frequency and buzzing in the system, right? Oh, I remember that. Okay. Well, I played it after we fixed it. It didn't do that anymore. So again, it's not it's more of an emotional and kind of a memory. I'm using the wrong words here. All right.
Yeah, we know. I think we know.
Kind of circling around the bottom of the hole here.
So I have a question actually back to the chip side of things. So are there like in the app? Like I said, I don't have a lot of experience with this stuff, but like on the app note side of things and the implementation of these chips, especially the ones that are doing more and more. So you mentioned that car stereo, the 2U unit that sounded really good. I mean, like, is that more of a choosing lots of good components around it as well? Or are there also implementations of the chips on board, like, layout tips, stuff like that have to be followed in order for this kind of stuff to really perform well? Is that offered in the
audio? There is. Layout plays a part in audio. As somebody who's actually, as I said, I've worked on those, world-leading, lowest THD you could possibly get, analog to digital converters and DACs as well.
I guess the stuff you do with the Ocean is audio,
deal.
basically,
You've got to choose
right?
the right kind of taps.
Yeah, like sonar.
The right kind of caps. You've got to lay that thing out. It's really can make a huge difference.
Think of it like this, right? The dynamic range that we're talking about with audio is enormous, right? We're talking systems comfortably 115, 120, 130 dB of dynamic range. Now, when you convert that into your voltage domain, right? And let's say the output of your DAC, right? Let's say it was 1 volt RMS.
Okay.
Then for like 130 dB system, you're into the nanovolts range, low nanovolts of noise to get that entire dynamic range.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, nanovolts of noise. A bad design. Let's say you had a power amplifier next to it. Let's make a boom box together here, right? And it's got a digital radio, so you've got a DAC and you've got a power amplifier. You send that ground current the wrong way past the DAC, and it pushes the ground reference up. You've just every time that amplifier is working hard, you're pushing ground up or pulling current down, right? You're sagging the supply and so on. So good design. So apps, notes, and things are excellent at showing you how to get one device to work well. A good reference design, TI does a lot of them, right? We have an initiative for reference designs. We'll show you how to get, good performance, almost data sheet performance, from the reference design. In many cases, absolute data sheet performance. But I hate to go emotional with you on this, but the real master designers, and I've met a few in my time, do some. They worry about the entire system. From the switch mode power supply switching rate and how that is gonna mess up with the PWM switching rate to the DAC rate. It's almost like they have global knowledge of the signal chain. So they look at the circuit board and they go, this could mess me up over here, that could mess me up over there, and they work around it. Good audio designers. And I find a lot of them in pro audio in my time. So guys doing mixing consoles worry about this stuff night and day. Guys doing broadcast systems, same thing, right? They worry about hum, they worry about crosstalk. They worry about all these other, how can everything else in my system interfere with this one circuit? And then they move on to another part of the circuit and ask the same question. How does everything else mess with this? And until the whole circuit is complete. It's not to say it's impossible, but it's a wonderful discipline that you get better with as you do more of it. That's the best way I can describe it. It's a real art.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, there was a really good, I think it was actually Hank, who we've had on the show before, Hank Sumberlin, who wrote a really good, it was just about ADC stuff, but I remember that was a app note that just kind of really messed me up because it kind of like pointed out all those things that I was missing, and then like you said, it wasn't just for one chip. It was like, I was putting like 4 ADCs on a board, and then okay, well now where do you center your grounds, and where do you have return current, stuff like that. It can be that system stuff.
The guru on that stuff, which multiple folks I've worked with have mentioned his name, and I've gone and bought one of his books as well. Is a guy called Henry Ott. You may have had him on the show before.
Yes.
We have had him on the show, yeah.
I mean, this guy's the guru. Just this, but before I read his books, people were saying, dealing with converters, you've got to have separate grounds for your analog and your digital, and never the twain shall meet other than in a small resistor underneath the converter and all this kind of stuff. And Henry Ott just comes along and says, you know what? Just understand where your return currents are going and partition your system sensibly. So, keep your sensitive analog away from that clock line that's coming from your SpeedIF interface or whatever. Just, smart system partitioning will do you better than trying to do these islands of grounds everywhere.
Right. I have one last question because it kind of relates to this with layout and stuff as well. So you mentioned the trends are changing for integrations and silicon and everything kind of getting kind of mushed together, but is there an impact to the package shrinking? Because that's kind of package technologies all seem to be going the same way as well, like smaller and smaller and smaller.
It depends what you're going into, right? So if you intend for your product to go into a very mobile product, then the world is definitely moving towards very tight geometry stuff, what we would call wafer chip scale packaging, which is basically, they take the die, they cut it up, they put balls underneath, and off you go and solder it. And if you're doing that kind of stuff, unless you're a master technician, that's really beyond the realms of what the kinds of products that we're talking about, really. As in to be able to do it, on a small scale, to be able to solder it, on a small, simple reflow system and so on. It really is the stuff of high-end experts. However, outside of that space, if you look at what goes into, your TV or your set-top box or maybe even your games console or your guitar amplifier or something, that stuff's still really hanging out in TSOP packages, thin SSOP packages, some QFP, and very recently starting to look at things like QFN. And ideally, even from a factory perspective, I think. I personally still prefer the old TSOPs and QFPs and.
T-sops?
I love T-sops.
Yes. SOIC for me, man.
You youngster. No. SO package.
I was about to say, you want dips next to you, Dave. It's just imagining, like, the last chip I did was a 30-pin TSSOP, and I'm thinking how big that bugger would be in a PDIP package. That would just be enormous. I mean, I'm wondering if like when you go to some concerts, if the venue is big enough.
Z80.
But you go to a concert, right, and the music sounds funny because it takes so long for the music to get from the stage all the way to where you are back at the nosebleeds. It'd be that kind of effect, but across the chip. The music's coming in at one end, and by the time it's got to the end, there's a natural delay in the system.
But that really adds to the warmth and the distortion. You can charge a lot more for those systems. I'm just saying.
I tell you what, then we'll make a special PDIP version for your your record player. Right?
That's right. Exactly. Right,
you can do point to point if you like.
Yeah.
Just quickly, because we've almost practically out of time. You mentioned the wafer scale chip packaging. Which is basically a bare die. Now, I've done a video on this, and it's well known that bare dies can be photosensitive. Is that an issue with analog parts? We know it's, there's, I think it might have been a Texas Instruments converter on the Raspberry Pi that was
it was the Xenon flash thing, right?
Yeah. When you flash it with a camera flash, which a high-intensity xenon strobe flash, there'd be so many photons hitting that chip that would, it would actually, the DC to DC converter locked up.
I saw that. I saw that video, Dave, and I'm not sure if it was the TI part. No.
Well, it may have been somebody else.
What I can say is, I believe that how do I say this properly? I think that was an error on the manufacturer's behalf, and not something you should say all devices act like this. Because if that was all WCSP devices, I don't think it's a weakness. I really don't. I mean, most of the time it's
it's a potential weakness because they're effectively an exposed die.
They're passivated as well normally. I mean, they go through a couple they go through an extra couple of steps. It's not bare die where you're like, don't put your finger on it. The grease will leak through the. It's not quite that bad.
Okay, so they're passive, but they are by definition can potentially be photosensitive.
They got less crap around them.
They do have less crap around them. Yeah, definitely.
And that's what I'm asking. Like, has that ever been a problem on audio?
Never heard of it. We've shipped billions of parts not billions, millions of parts like that, and
got it.
The quality guys have never come to me.
Certainly didn't expect it to be. Yeah, no, I didn't expect it to be. I just thought if there was some obscure. No. Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, stray grounds and things are normally the things that get, devices, and that could be a TSOP or a WCSP.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's a layout.
Right. Yeah. So what's the future of expat? I mean, are you guys still making new products?
Expat, when and where possible. We're really looking at remote control of analog. So cool. We see analog effects processing definitely as something is coming back, or something that continues to hold a thrill for a lot of people. A lot of folks move to what we call like plugins, VST plugins, where if you want a $2,000 audio compressor sound, right, you buy the plugin and then you could use it on every single track in your system, right? The scalability was incredible, but there's a lot of folks who still hold on to this old sounding system, but they've gotten used to the wonderful recall capability that's in their computer. So, you can fire up your computer a week later, push a button, and all the settings come back. Right, and with old analog technology, you can't do that today.
You put marks on the dials. That's what you do. You put a little piece of tape and you put the mark.
So my mom was a BBC studio technician for the BBC back in the 70s, and she had to make sure that everything was running smoothly with all the systems like this. And they actually used to have interns that would run around with a photograph, a paper line drawing of the equipment. And they would mark where the knobs were at the end of the session, and then before that musician came back in, 2 weeks later to finish the song, this poor little guy would be flipping through pages, going, "Oh, channel 1 was 10 o'clock for this knob, 3 o'clock for that one," trying to get it all right. It sounded the same, right? I mean, talk about painful.
Wow.
I mean, yeah.
Right.
So,
and if it drifted in the meantime, if you had a cold snap, it was screwed anyways.
Well, I think most of that stuff was just left on permanently, right? And somebody else was footing the electricity bill. Because those big old mixing consoles are power hungry. I mean, they're huge power supplies, so you don't let those things cool down. But
I've got one of those for teardown. It's 2 meters long. It's bigger than my workbench.
Who makes it? You got to tell me. Is it like SSL or Neve?
It's a Yamaha.
The big Yamaha.
It's a Yamaha.
Yeah, I saw you actually had the small Yamaha that you did a teardown of as well, right? I think I saw that one.
Oh, yes, that was ages ago. No, I've got... It can't fit in my lab here. I can't bring it in the lift. It won't fit in the lift to get up here. Whoa. So I've got it's down in my bunker, so it's like 2 meters long.
You're going to stick the lights down to the garage, the parking garage, right? Do the teardown there. And,
to do whatever you do, that's right. And as you said, they're so power hungry. It doesn't have a power supply built in. It has to come with a 19-inch rack, which I don't have. 19-inch rack power supply to power. And
normally that would be in a separate room, right? So in a recording studio, they would move that to the machine room where everything goes click and clack, right? Yeah, commissioning those consoles is an art in itself. The guy I work with at Expat Audio, his previous role was looking after a media college in the US, where they have 100 mixing studios.
Right. Oh,
and they'd have guys once a month going through pushing every button on the console, because they could be a 48 channel console, 15 switches per channel. And a chance that one of those switches would fail. When you did the math, it was like one will fail every month.
Wow.
So bring out the intern again, right? He's not drawing pictures anymore, but he's like, channel 1, switch 1, channel 1, switch 2.
My finger hurts, sir.
Exactly. I've got Nintendo thumb.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, wow.
So I think we've been through a lot of time there. I'm sorry if it was a little...
No, that's okay. We always go over.
Well, you're going to have a lot of editing to say, that was crap, that was crap, that was funny, that was crap. So,
Editing. What do you think this is?
No. Thank you very much for joining us. Where can people follow you? Are you a Twitter man? Are you on Twitter? And all that sort of jazz.
I'm on Twitter at Expat Audio. Expat Audio also has a Facebook page that's much more active than our Twitter.
We hate Facebook.
Oh, really? I'm so sorry, guys. But
that's
really,
the
place I would encourage folks who have audio questions to come and hang out is at TI's E2E forum. It is manned by real human beings.
He's a company man through and through.
I've seen what it's done for us and how many more customers we can help with it. It's awesome.
It's really good. And there's requirements on FAEs to help out there and everything too. I know
our internal factory guys are
really
on there.
good.
And the nicest thing, which we thought we wouldn't see in audio, is customers are starting to help each other as well.
Yeah,
and
that's great.
That's what forum communities do. Once you set it up, you'll find that they'll just help each other. You won't have to do it anymore. They'll just, somebody will answer somebody else's question before your FAEs can come in and answer
exactly,
it.
Exactly.
That's how forums work.
So it's a real gift. Previously, before that, it was all by email through our field application guys, and it's a very different story. So, come on over to ti.com, ete.ti.com, and it's, come tell us how we can help you with your products. Spoken like a true company man.
Oh, that was just gold.
Someone's getting a raise this year. Someone's getting a raise.
It's going to take a lot more than that, Chris.
Just tell them that you need to buy that set of speakers, and maybe they'll give in. Dual for fun plus.
I hear the words to When You Wish Upon a Star, but it's. Thank you very much for having me on the show, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm excited.
Thanks, mate. It's been awesome.
There we go. Oh, by the way, there's also, you may want to add this later, Chris. I also have a Reddit thread up on Nice Chips for the new ADC that I finished. It's just a real opportunity for folks to come and ask questions like, why did you do that? How does that work? And that kind of thing.
And what's the name of that chip?
That's the PCM 186X family. They're a bunch of 3.3 volt high performance ADCs.
Yeah. Awesome. We will definitely show people.
I appreciate that. It's
cool.
A passion.
Well, thanks
Thank
again.
You guys. You have a good evening.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks, mate. See ya.
So, it was a pretty good show, huh, Dave? I mean, Dafydd was a pretty good guest.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't really paying attention, so I'm not sure. I guess it was fine.
Were you on Parts.io again?
Yeah, I was trying to look for power switches, and I can't find them.
Swear to God, I am going to get a new co-host.
Well, look, there's a lot of people out there that are probably better than I am at doing this, so... I would start searching. Maybe get some people off of a comment board or forum or something like that.
I'll do that.
Yeah, I would recommend it.